Incoming transmission. Initiating data compilation protocol. Compilation complete. Enhancing. Initializing data playback. Code Alpha. Begin playback.
Hello, and welcome to the Big Giant Head Podcast. My name is Matt. If you are a child or hate adults, speak to yourself a favor and don't listen because there be curse words and such ahead, but otherwise, happy to have you. So what the hell is the Big Giant Head Podcast, and why isn't this Madness AM anymore? Or what happened to Madness AM? Well, Madness AM kind of outlived its usefulness, I guess. I don't know. One of the core concepts of it was that it was supposed to be recorded in the morning at some, unreasonable hour like 5 a.m. or 6 a.m., which was when I was, before our apartment fire, that's when I was kind of starting my day. I'd wake up, do the podcast. It was supposed to be sort of like a daily affirmation thing. Just kind of speak into the microphone about what I had planned for the day and what I was hoping to accomplish with it, with the day, that is. And then I'd go off and I'd, draw my daily webcomic or whatever. And then I'd work on Savage and then work on what other projects I had lined up. A lot of that has since gone away because I've gone full-time on Savage. And thanks to the fire, like all my drawing stuff that I was using, all my art supplies and my drafting table, ink and brush sets were were consumed in the flames. So Madness AM kind of got a little funky to me anymore. It just was sort of like, well, I guess I could talk about Savage and nothing else, pretty much, which would have kind of changed the concept of the whole thing. And you know what? It really doesn't matter. Maybe I just needed a new name for something to kind of put a new coat of paint on whatever the hell this is. Me yammering away into a microphone. But yeah, that's kind of what's going on with it now. And where the hell did the name come from? I was talking to my friend Tim, who's also working on a game called Boss 101. And he's been working in game development for a long time. And he's been like team lead on a bunch of stuff. And we were talking about... he brought up to me the Big Giant Head concept, which was where he can tell when... a developer or a team of developers have kind of run out of visual ideas when you start to see big giant heads put in the background of their, like, for assets and stuff. Like, you look at the background and you see like a giant statue of a head or something, or a robot head or an alien, whatever it is, like a big skull or something. And he's like, that's usually the point in development when the art team essentially is out of ideas, and they're just like, just put a big giant head in the background. It'll be fine. It'll be good. And that made me laugh because Savage kind of started out with a big giant head being the tower, the Shard of Gosen. And it's got a big old blue stone head right in the middle of the damn tower. And that's like one of the first things you see when you start the game up on the title screen is the tower with its big giant head placed right in the middle. Sorry, I'm adjusting the volume on the mixer. This is the first time I've done a podcast in a long time, so all my recording stuff is totally out of whack. But yeah, anyway, that's kind of where the idea comes from. which might be kind of a shitty collection of words to use as a title for a creative endeavor, but who knows? Maybe the gods of irony will smile on us, and this will all turn out fine and good and wonderful. But anyway, yeah, Big Giant Head Podcast, episode number 1. Thanks for listening. Also, I Googled the name Big Giant Head Podcast, and nothing came up except for like a few podcasts called Big Head Mode. So there's that. So maybe this is the only Big Giant Head podcast in existence, which is awesome. But anyway, so I'll play around with the format of this thing as we go. But let's start with a life update, because why the hell not? So recently, I had a really bad case of shin splints. because I started running like crazy towards the end of December and into January. And I was running on a treadmill, which I'd never do because I'd never had access to a treadmill. But the apartment complex that we live in right now has a gym right downstairs, which is super convenient and super awesome. And they have a treadmill down there. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to get in shape and go down there and run for, 35 minutes a day and whatever else. In addition to, they've got like a weight machine down there and everything and free weights and all kinds of good stuff. So I was finally like, talking to my wife. She's a personal trainer. Help me please. Because I sit on my ass all day working on Savage. And I need to kind of get up and move around so that my muscles don't feel like rotten string. But I started to get these really bad pains in my shins and like lower leg. And of course, like right around then too, I read this article about a guy who got blood clots, and my weird little hypochondriac brain, of course, started inventing symptoms and things in my legs where I'm like, oh my God, there's blockage down there. I have blood clots and my heart and my brain are going to explode. And oh my God, it's happening. It's really happening. Went to the doctor, got all checked out again. If you don't know, I went, what is it, like a year and a half ago now, maybe 2 years, because I thought I was having a heart attack. Because my chest hurt, or what I thought was my chest, and my brain did some weird crap, and just I'm able to focus on little parts of my body and get hypersensitive about them, and create my own little personal physical hell essentially. So I went to the doctor, or went to the hospital on this particular instance, and they did all kinds of. They did the EKG and the CAT scan and everything, and they're like, X-rays, and we can't find a damn thing wrong with you. And I felt super stupid. But anyway, this time I did not go to the hospital. I just went to the doctor, and they're like, you know what? It's and thankfully too, I guess she's a nurse practitioner, the one that I always see when I go to this particular doctor's office. She's a big time runner. She also has asthma, so it's great that she kind of knows a lot about that stuff from personal experience already. So like, no, you're fine. Nothing's wrong with you. Shin splints can hurt for like 6 months. Or you can, experience symptoms in varying degrees for like 6 months. Usually like within the first like 4 weeks, they lessen big time. And mine did. And, yeah, that kind of threw me on my ass for a little while. And my wife too, she's like, you probably have shin splints, because I had them and they felt crazy. And they do. They feel like your legs have like a fever or something. You keep getting like hot and cold sensations, and it feels like worms are wriggling around in there. And because what happens is, bone tissue is not like, it's not like stone. It's not super solid. It has some give and flex in there. And I was just pounding away on the treadmill, and what shin splints are essentially are micro tears and like fractures in the bone and muscle and tendon tissue in and around your legs. So that's kind of what was happening. And I've still got some echoes of them, but it's mostly gone away now. And I've switched over to using they have elliptical machines down there too. So I've been using those, and they seem to have been helping. Doing a lot of stretches. I mean, that's a big part of doing this, right? Like, you're sitting at your desk all damn day. I'm usually pretty fiddly though, so I usually get up every 20 minutes or so and go and do something, or especially now anymore, because of the shin splints and everything. I will get up and do stretches and just move around in general. But it's cut into my gym time. I ain't getting my gains, bro. Which is obnoxious. It's always obnoxious when your body rises up against you and, puts a limitation on you, and he's like, oh, hey, look, can't do that anymore, I guess, for a little while. So that's annoying. Allergies, man. Allergies have been crazy out here. The cat has really bad allergies too. And, of course, we didn't know it before we moved to Texas, but Texas, especially Austin, is like one of the worst places to live if you have allergies in the United States. So, bullseye. Man, I guess the life update, our little life update segment there is kind of like the airing of the grievances. Now all we need is to perform a feat of strength. If this were Festivus. But anyway, that's kind of what's been going on outside of game development and work and stuff. Let's see, since Madness AM, God rest its soul. I can't remember if I talked at all about setting up the LLC with Planet Tobor and everything, but I did that, and now it's time to actually pay taxes. I'm coming very close to the deadline, and there's a bunch of other sort of local stuff that you have to do too, like Texas-related state stuff for the comptroller, it's called, and you have to file some kind of tax report with them as well. I think mostly just to show that your business as an entity is still alive and kicking and hasn't passed on or something weird. So I've been learning a lot about all that stuff, and it's a lot to juggle along with developing the game, because you go and you do your bookkeeping stuff and whatever sort of background-y bureaucratic stuff, and it totally doesn't feel like you're getting any work done, but it's absolutely necessary for running things, and I'm glad I'm learning about it now, as opposed to later when things are fingers crossed moving along at a faster and better rate. But yeah, that's essentially everything that's going on behind the scenes, I guess. And since with Big Giant Head, I kind of want to make it a little more video game centric. Since that's what I'm doing, may as well talk about what I'm playing when I'm not working. On the off chance that I actually do allow myself play every once in a while, it's like every couple months or so, I go into this like 2-week stretch or so where I'm like, I really got to play something. I want to play some games and sort of cleanse my palate and remind myself again why I'm working on the thing that I'm working on, which is Savage, right? It's like, okay, let's go and look at what's out there, or old stuff too, old shit that I probably missed in all likelihood. But lately, what I've been playing is Dark Souls, the first one, and holy shit, is that such an awesome game in so many ways. I mean, a hallmark of the series anymore is its brilliant level design and all that. And I had played a little Demon Souls back in the day. A friend of mine let me borrow his PlayStation 3 along with a copy of Demon Souls. What else did he let me borrow? See, Souls games are so awesome that I can't even remember what the hell else I played. I think it was an Uncharted 2, Valkyria Chronicles, and I guess, yeah, just Demon Souls. That's plenty, though, like for letting somebody borrow your damn console. It was like I had it for a week, so I couldn't really sink my teeth into anything except Uncharted. Uncharted was pretty easy to finish in like 1 or 2 sittings, but the little bit that I played of Demon Souls, I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna really like this. I don't want to get attached to this because I got to give it back, and I'm gonna be super sad if I fall in love with it too hard. But yeah, I can't remember how long I made it into the game or anything, because this was like 2011 or so, 2010. It was before we moved to Texas, so it was a while ago, but holy crap, that game was awesome. Yeah, I had never played anything like it either. I mean, as far as mood and atmosphere, those games, the Souls games, have such a specific tone to them. I mean, part of what makes them what they are, they're just dripping in style, mood, and atmosphere. And Dark Souls is no exception. I finally beat the damn thing. I sunk my teeth in, drew the line. Yeah, no father. And I beat it. The first time. Went through Ornstein and Smo. After that, I think the Ornstein and Smo fight was really the tipping point for me. It was like, hey, I kind of know how to play Dark Souls now, I think. Maybe. But I'm well into my New Game Plus run of the thing, and I'm back at Ornstein and Smo. Haven't beaten them for a second time yet, but just so many little things to love in that game. For starters, I mean, the core game loop. Leaving your bonfire, accruing souls, leveling up, and then all the little things that are sort of attached to that and run parallel to it, like the humanity system and everything. How humanity kind of helps you on your way in various ways. By, I guess, humanity improves certain resistances and things. It makes you more, gives you more virility and and vigor. And improves like your item find rate, so it kind of doubles as like a luck sort of thing, and it also allows you to summon other players into your game world so they can help you take down bosses and stuff like that. But at the same time, it opens you up to invasion, and it's such an awesome game because in so many ways, like the humanity system and the souls system, and the souls you use for everything. You use it to buy stuff and use it to level up. It's like your sort of pool of experience, your like liquid pool of experience that you can lose if you die. So your risk factor is constantly, it just always has a number assigned to it. So you know exactly, you can look at it and know exactly what's on the line all the time. You've got X amount of humanity and X amount of souls. It keeps getting higher and higher and higher. The likelihood increases that you're going to lose it all eventually. It's just really neat. That you can that it quantifies your risk for you. So enjoyed the hell out of that. Not to mention the level design too. Like everything. I guess I'll get into this with Dark Souls 2 because I have started playing Dark Souls 2 as well. And I don't know if I'm doing a disservice to Dark Souls 2 having jumped into it directly from Dark Souls. Because there are so many weird little things about Dark Souls 2. Like, Dark Souls 2 is kind of the one that everyone likes to hate on, right? And I can totally see why. I went into it with an open mind. I was like, this can't be that bad. What, like, maybe its biggest sin is probably that it's not, like, really a great Souls game. It might still be a good game. Maybe it's not a great Souls game. So I kind of went into it with those expectations. And there are, like, just a billion little things. I'm exaggerating, of course, but there's several things that sort of make it way less of an enjoyable experience, at least right away. I mean, for me, it's kind of hard to figure it out because figure out my feelings on it and sort of internalize like what I dislike about it because I don't know how much of it is being informed by Dark Souls at all, not just games, not just as an interactive piece of software, but just Dark Souls coming from Dark Souls. And I mean, I don't think that's too unfair of a factor because, I mean, it is Dark Souls 2, right? It's the next one. It's the same series. So you should kind of expect a few things to carry over. Like the frickin' game loop from Dark Souls. Which I feel like Dark Souls 2 really kind of messes up. Like instead of there isn't a humanity, at least not a number. Like humanity doesn't work the same way. Like you don't accrue humanity points like you did in Dark Souls. You use these little things called effigies to reverse your hollowing. And if you're hollow in Dark Souls 2, you can still be invaded. In the first Dark Souls, it had a very kind of strict, it felt like a very tight loop. Like if you were to look at the game loop, it would look like this perfect circle, right? And I'm probably totally fanboying over this and, so what? I don't care. I loved it. But Dark Souls 2, if you look at the game loop, it probably looks like a plate of spaghetti or this weird squiggly line that is supposed to kind of resemble a circle. And plus it has a bunch of little weird branches and shit. Yeah, it totally messes up the whole, being able to invaded when you're hollow, which is kind of weird to me. Speaking of which, I had kind of forgotten about it just recently. I was playing, and I set the controller down because I had died a couple times and whatever. It's like, I got hungry. I'm going to go grab a tortilla and put some hummus on it and essentially make myself a little tortilla sandwich because that's what we eat here. But I I walked back, and I was standing at a bonfire, so I was like, okay, maybe I'll rest at the bonfire and just quit the game or whatever, or try to make a run at and get pick up my souls that were lying a few feet away because I had died to this big ridiculous enemy, but I couldn't access the bonfire, and I was like, oh no, what's going on? And I'm like holding the tortilla sandwich, let's call it a wrap, in my hand, and it's like, wait, if I can't use the bonfire, let me try to quit the game. So I go to quit the game. It's like, you can't quit the game. I was like, oh shit, I'm being invaded, aren't I? And then this fucking dude walks around the corner with a giant scythe, and I'm sitting there like, what's going on? I cram the tortilla in my mouth so I can hold it in my mouth, and I'm like fumbling on the gamepad, and the guy waves at me. He has enough time to wave at me, and then he makes a leaping strike at me with this giant scythe weapon and just one shots me. And then the motherfucker waves at me as I'm dying. So there went my then I couldn't get my souls back that I had lost in my previous death. So I was just like, fuck this. I turned it off. But I had forgotten that, not only can you not save not save, but pause. You can't pause the damn game in a Souls game. And in Dark Souls 2, you are now susceptible to invasion when you're hollow. So I haven't quite figured that out yet. Like, I don't understand how that helps the game, really. I mean, I guess it makes multiplayer way more accessible because everyone can participate all the time now. But you still have to be in human form to summon people. So there's that. And then with the bonfire I feel like has kind of lost a lot of its relevance in Dark Souls 2. In the first one, you used your bonfire as kind of your safe spot, which hasn't really changed, but you used it as your place to go to level up. You would go to your bonfire, and you would, if you had enough souls, you would put them into stats and stuff and level your character up. In Dark Souls 2, there's only one place in the whole game that you can go to level up. Which sounds kind of crazy, except for that now, from the very beginning of the game, you can teleport to every bonfire that you visited. Right? So, you can't level up at a bonfire, but you can use the bonfire to teleport to the bonfire that has the NPC that will allow you to level up. So they've added this weird extra step. And I guess that's kind of how it worked in Demon's Souls, but it's like, why are we regressing here? If that's even the case. So, that is a little irksome to me anyway. I don't know if it's like a loading issue or something, or if they need to dump a bunch of memory so they have you teleport to the same location every time to load. I don't know. I who knows? Who knows what the deal is there? So there's a lot of weird little things that I haven't quite figured out how they aid the game loop at all, really, just yet. And the bonfire too, it was how everything was so integrated and intertwined. Like the humanity and the souls were all used at the bonfire to reverse your hollowing, your state of undeath. You would sacrifice a humanity point to turn yourself human at a bonfire. You would kindle the bonfire, and if you kindled the bonfire, it gave you another sip from your Estus flask, which is essentially your healing potion. You just had this sort of bottomless healing potion that you carried with you everywhere. It would eventually run out, but you could go to every time you rested at a bonfire, it would refill. The bonfire was also the place that you could sacrifice a firekeeper soul, they're called, to increase the amount of health you would gain per sip from your Estus flask. So the bonfire had all these really awesome uses. All that has been kind of thrown away in Dark Souls 2. the same person that you level up at is also the person that you go to give you more sips in your Estus flask. I don't know if the Estus flask ever gets stronger, like gives you more health per sip. I haven't gotten that far yet. I've gotten to the first major boss. There's like 4 major bosses, I guess, that you have to collect their souls to do whatever. The whole narrative structure of it too is a little stranger than Dark Souls. Like in Dark Souls, even at the beginning of it, during the opening cinematic, it kind of shows you exactly who you're supposed to kill. So you see your big bad guys in the opening cinematic. Whether you know that they're the big bad guys yet, you're not really sure, and you kind of find that out later. You're like, oh, those dudes I saw in the cinematic, I'm supposed to fight them, I guess. Dark Souls 2 doesn't really have a whole lot of that, and it's kind of weird. The NPC dialogue feels a lot more, a lot less subtle. Like the NPCs will say stuff like, you're gonna die over and over and over again. And it's like, oh, come on, really? Like, and they talk a lot about despair and souls and undeath and it's like not like Dark Souls didn't have any of that either, but it felt a lot more natural and bizarre and conversational. In Dark Souls 2, it almost feels like a little too on the nose, a little heavy-handed with delivery and the writing. But yeah, man, I'm sorry I sound so fucking crotchety about this. I feel like some cranky old man, especially talking about like my body pains and shit. It's like, my legs hurt. Dark Souls 2 isn't as good as Dark Souls 1. Yeah. There's still a lot of stuff that I like about Dark Souls 2, but holy shit, man. Like, one thing I hate about it are the freaking exploding barrels. All of a sudden there's all these damn exploding barrels all over the place. Like it's Doom or something. And you constantly, if you don't know where they are at first, there's a lot of this kind of bullshit in Dark Souls 2 where it's like, if you haven't been there and you haven't figured out what's in the area, like something's probably going to get you. You know, shit constantly is scripted to come at you from behind when you reach a certain area. There's lots more group fights in Dark Souls 2. And the general, like, in Dark Souls, group fights it's not really built for group fights, the combat system. Like, you can kind of handle them if you're very, very, very careful and your timing is really good. But it's generally not a horde fighty game. It's mostly like supposed to be very one-on-one, and you kind of manage extra enemies in the peripheral a little bit, as far as like, you know, spatially and stuff. Dark Souls 2 has a lot of these instances where you run into like the same type of enemy copy pasted like 7 times in an area, and they just fucking mob you. You learn to deal with it, but at first it's like, come on, what the fuck, man? What the fuck? I know it's a Souls game, it's supposed to be hard, but and it does. I mean, it eventually teaches you. There's one instance in particular that I'm thinking of in like the second or third area of the game where there are these dudes that have these armored dudes. I guess they're called swordsmen, that have these big giant like claymore type looking swords, and there's this area that just, if you walk into a room, you can get 7 of them on your ass at a time. And you know, if you know how Dark Souls works, you have your stamina bar, and everything that you do uses up stamina. So if you're holding up your shield and you take a hit on your shield, that reduces your stamina a little bit. And as long as you're blocking, your stamina regen is very slow. So you kind of have to let your guard down to breathe more, essentially. And let your stamina bar fill back up. When you're being assaulted by like 7 of these dudes with their big heavy swords, 3 strikes or so, and your freaking stamina bar just goes down. And then the next strike breaks your block and probably does a lot of damage. And, you know, 2 or 3 hits and you're dead. So there's a lot of shit like that where... a lot of trial and error stuff. And I guess these games, it reminds me a lot of this certain type of game, Dark Souls 2, right? Where I think it actually has a genre now. Like it stemmed from, I guess, you know, I want to be the guy, and I want to be the guy Gaijin in those types of games, and I guess like 1001 Spikes is sort of like a take on that too. I can't remember what the type of game is called, but it's like a trial and error game where it's like you don't know that there's a spike pit there until you've walked on it and gotten killed and died from it. You know, all of these like kind of horse shit. these fiddly little things that happen to you that are probably going to kill you unless you know they're there. So you've already had to have gone through it and failed to know what to expect and how to deal with it or how to avoid it or whatever. I mean, Dark Souls, sure, it had some of that, but Dark Souls 2 feels like that sort of stuff every step of the damn way almost. It's got the exploding barrels. It's got guys that are scripted to run at you when your back is turned. You know, like traps, essentially. Like bad guy traps and also literal traps. And again, like Dark Souls had stuff like that, but usually in Dark Souls, okay, like you could kind of see what was ahead for the most part. Or the levels were crafted in such a way that they had this like sort of ability to almost telegraph to you at least what you could expect. Also a lot of audio cues too. Like you could kind of listen for things and sort of correct yourself. You had a window usually to correct yourself. Dark Souls 2 kind of throws that out the window and just it's like somebody knew what a Souls game was and then decided to make one, and they made it because they heard Dark Souls was hard, and that's what they did. Which playing through Dark Souls, it's not hard if you pay attention and you kind of watch and learn. Dark Souls 2 is littered with areas that sort of the way that they teach you is to just fucking kill you. And I might be being unfair, but you know, but like I said, there's a lot of stuff that to like in it. But yeah, the exploding barrels is just nonsense to me, and the group mob sort of enemy stuff can go to hell. Oh my god, the pursuer fight is kind of obnoxious. And the fight itself isn't that bad, but the pursuer is one of the bosses. And it's almost like they copy-pasted him throughout the rest of the game. Because I've run into him like 4 more times or so. Or at least a version of him. I almost feel like he has taken the place of what the Black Knights were in Dark Souls. But the Black Knights were usually kind of different. Like, you know, some of them had spears and some of them had like a 2-handed weapon or something, or some of them had a giant shield and a giant weapon. This guy is like just kind of always the same. He's this big floaty knight guy with a big giant sword. And he's not so bad if you learn like how to deal with him. But he's everywhere, man. he's like everywhere. There's one area in the game where like it branches out into like 3 areas, I think, and like every frickin' path I took, like it ended with him in it. But and it was especially obnoxious because it was before I'd gotten really good at fighting him. But now I know like that I can parry him, and I know what to watch for and what to dodge and all that crap. But yeah, like it's like a combination of all this stuff, and the enemies don't really seem to use stamina like they did in the first game. Like I guess, and I was just reading about this too. I was like, what is up with Dark Souls 2? It feels weird to me. The control is a little different, and the enemies feel weird. Like it feels like they're not really playing by the same rules as they used to somehow. But I was reading that up on forum posts and stuff. I don't have no idea how reliable any of this shit is. It could all be in my head, but it seems like enemies have a lot more, like they're a lot more aggressive with their movesets this go around, and also their telegraphing is way different for some of them. Particularly the smaller enemies, like the man-sized type characters. But in Dark Souls, I guess enemies all operated on stamina as well, just like the player. Like they had a pool of stamina that they could use, and they could, assign actions to the stamina pool or whatever. Like if they swung, it would take away a little stamina. If they ran at you or sprinted at you, it takes away stamina, and you could visually see that they needed to take a break, just like the player did. Like they'd back away from you. or something. Dark Souls 2, it kind of feels like a lot of the man-sized enemies don't quite have that same stamina pool. Like, they have this, like, a lot of them have this sort of endless reserve of strength. They just are kind of relentless sometimes. So I'm wondering how much of that changed, too, if they were just like, nah, we'll just let them do stuff if they want to. So who knows? One thing I do like, though, about the combat of Dark Souls 2 is it does feel a little more punchy. When you strike an enemy, it feels like there's a little bit more oomph when you connect. Just a little bit. But yeah, they changed like the parry and riposte system and the backstab, which isn't really a backstab anymore. It's more like a back eviscerate. Like your character just wails on a guy if he gets like an opportunity strike in the back, which can be kind of cathartic. Especially after you've taken a beating over and over and over to either weird-ass level design and just the encounters and everything. Like, you just had enough. If you get a good, like, backstab in, it feels pretty good because your dude just, like, wails on the guy. But yeah, exploding barrels, the pursuer, the telegraphing. Oh my god, the enemy tracking. I'm reading my podcast notes here. The enemy tracking has gotten a lot tighter. It feels like they don't let up as easily. If you're trying to circle around them to dodge a hit or try to get a backstab in, it's a lot harder to do, which can be a good thing. It kind of forces you to do a little bit more fighting guys head on, which I definitely started to cheese the game in Dark Souls by. Especially when I get to the Silver Knights and the Black Knights and stuff, I would just sort of circle around them until they stood still for a second so I could get a backstab in. But yeah, the invasion while you're hollow, invaded while I was making a sandwich, only being able to level up at an NPC in a specific place. All these weird little things that sort of contribute to the game feeling like almost an alien experience, even though it's a sequel. But there's a lot of cool stuff still to like about it. I mean, there's still interesting, visually interesting enemy designs and things. But that's one thing I've always liked about games like Dark Souls, and now Dark Souls 2, are that the enemies look like they have a very physical property to them. They almost don't look like video game characters. They look like they could be characters in a Ray Harryhausen movie or something, like stop motion animated monsters and things, or things made by Jim Henson Studios or something. They look like they were physically molded and painted and animated with like rigging and stuff. I mean physical rigging, not like 3D rigging. You know what I mean? They have a real physical property to them. Which kind of and the environments too. The environments also almost look like a really cool, creepy movie set, like Labyrinth or something. To bring the Jim Henson thing into it again, but yeah, all the props and the way the areas look, and some of the NPCs are very enjoyable too. Like I like the Scottish guy. He's kind of funny. There's a cat that you can talk to in the sort of hub area, who's kind of entertaining. The old woman that sells trinkets and stuff, she kind of carries her store around on her back. So there's a few things that are neat. Yeah, like I said, the combat feels a little more punchy as far as animation and sound design goes. So yeah. Oh, but speaking of punchy combat, I recently got to play the game Slain with an exclamation mark, which is a 2D action platformer, lo-fi, kind of pixel arty looking. Though it does look like they had animated some stuff in a 3D program and created sprites off of the animations they made in a like Diablo or something. Some of it looks kind of like that, but it's a gorgeous looking game. It looks like a freaking black metal or a death metal album come to life, which is why it's very sad for me to say that I really didn't enjoy it very much. I played a little bit of it. I've got the opportunity to play a friend's copy, and it's like I haven't gotten very far in it, but the game has a lot of really weird issues, especially for a game that uses like genre music as a clear inspiration. Like it's got really crazy sound issues were the first things that I noticed about it. Like moving around the options menu is super fucking loud. The only option is a sound section. That's all you get from the options menu, which that's fine, whatever. But I had to turn the music volume way down because I couldn't frickin' hear like my dude swinging his sword and when he'd connect with stuff and when he'd get hit. And it wasn't until I turned the sound down or the music down and tried to listen for those little pieces of audio that I realized a lot of the stuff doesn't even have any audio. Like it's really hard to tell when you're hit. Like hitting switches in the game and stuff. Like there's just no accompanying sound for a lot of it. But it was really weird that I had to actually turn the music down to hear any of the actual video game stuff. But speaking of punchy combat, like the combat almost has, for me, like zero payoff. It's sort of a weird combo system, I guess. You have like a 3-hit combo if you time it correctly, but you can interrupt your own strike animations if you like mash on the button long enough, which is really weird. So it's like it skips a cue and goes into your next attack. Like it interrupts your previous attack and goes into your next attack, which is strange because you only really have one attack. No, I'm sorry. You have 2 attack buttons. One attack button is used to decapitate your enemies, apparently. But you can only decapitate enemies that are low on health, and it's very hard to see any sort of visual indication that an enemy is low on health and you can decapitate them. The purpose of decapitating an enemy is to absorb some mana. Like you have a mana bar and you can cast spells and stuff. But it's almost... my God, I don't even know where to begin. So a lot of the enemies will kind of clump up into this like crazy mass. Like, and if you look at the game, it already looks kind of busy. You know, it's got a lot of particle effects and stuff, and usually a monster sprite, including your own sprite at times, depending on if you have like an enchanted weapon or something. But a lot of the monster sprites are very drippy looking. Like they've got a lot of, goo on them and stuff, and there's blood everywhere, and there are things dripping in the background and things in the foreground, like particle effects and stuff, like embers like floating by and stuff, and ash. So it's a very drippy, particle-y looking game. So you bunch a bunch of these enemies up into this like swarming mass, and they kind of just like move towards you, and you just kind of hit it with your sword, like you're just sort of slashing at this wall of goo. But it could be like 4 or 5 different enemies trying to hit you and stuff. There's a dodge button, though the dodge is kind of weird. I don't think there are any invincibility frames, so you still usually take damage when you try to dodge. And when you take damage, like you don't really have. I mean, you probably have some, but like your invincibility box window is very tiny. So you can get like kind of stun locked real easily, which is something that I really can't stand in a 2D game, especially in a 2D platformer game where if you collide with enemies, you take damage. Like there is a way to do that, right? I think, but especially in a game like Slain that's sort of built around combos a little bit. Like I think that's kind of a weird choice. To me, like that's always like if you were playing like Streets of Rage or something, or Double Dragon, say, and if you touched a bad guy, you would take damage instead of them hitting you. So yeah, this stuff like this, like that makes Slain feel very weird to me. Like it doesn't feel finished. The stages too are very sort of like It doesn't help, like the way the enemies are, the way that they just sort of mob towards you. It doesn't help that like most of what I've played I probably played like half an hour. Most of what I played is just like very level, like the terrain just stretches on for a long time. And then you just sort of run into enemies and just like start swinging at them until they die. Oftentimes too, you can kind of stun lock guys as well, and like you don't even have to worry. Like you can just play it one-handed. Like you just keep jamming on the attack button, and until the thing in front of you dies. And the animations are such that it makes it kind of hard to dodge once you start swinging. If you see someone start to swing at you, there's not a lot of telegraphing. Again, with the telegraphing, right? Like there's not a lot of I don't know. Maybe I need to look at it again, but it feels very floaty and weird in the combat. Okay, here's the thing. If the combat was punchy enough, if there was some really, really good feedback in the combat, and I bet like it's 90% an audio thing, right? Like if they nailed the audio and it felt really good to just hit something with your big old fucking sword, and it sounded great, that would resonate a lot more. I mean, look at something like Dragon Warrior or Dragon Quest, if you will, I guess. That game, like I always use that kind of as a reference point for this sort of stuff, because Dragon Warrior, especially for what it is, has some of the best like tension and release for me in its combat. And if you look, it's not an action game. It's in case anybody doesn't freaking know what Dragon Warrior is, it's an old NES RPG, Japanese RPG, like pretty much the birth of the JRPG as we know it, I guess. But you wander around an overworld map or whatever, it could be a dungeon or something, and then you randomly trigger an encounter with an enemy or something. It's only in the first game anyway. It's only ever one enemy. And then the enemy appears up on your screen. Doesn't animate or anything. Doesn't move. It's just a sprite, a static sprite of like a ghost or a skeleton or something. And then a list of commands comes up, and you choose fight, and whatever. And then the fight animation is. I keep saying animation. That's got to say something about this, right? That I am internalizing it that way. But you click fight or something on your crappy little Nintendo gamepad, and you hear a little like sort of swing sound, and then a like a crunch, like a pow noise if your blow connects, and then the enemy sprite flickers like that you hit it, and within these little teeny tiny moments, it does so well on delivering tension and release in this like fraction of a second. You hear the swing, which is like your wind up, and then a smash, and then the enemy flickers. For whatever reason, that combination of stuff just sort of communicates to you that you struck a really solid, good blow on a bad guy. and that's kind of been the core of how I've been designing the Savage combat. I mean, I hate to say all this shit about Slain because I've been watching it over the past like year and a half, and of course I've been curious about it because it's an action 2D fantasy platformer game with a featuring a dude with long hair and big weapons. I wanted to see how it did and like what they were going to do with the game and everything, and sort of like hold it up next to what I was doing in Savage. But I mean, they've got plenty of opportunity here right now, I think, to kind of iron some of that stuff out. And I think I even, before I started recording, I was looking up a little bit about what was going on with the news concerning Slain. And one of the news updates, they had said that they were going to do a whole new sound effects pass, like an audio and sweetening pass. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly what Slain needs. Like, if you can't fix the way some of the levels work and some of the combat works, at least you can like inject some sound into it and give it a lot more life and character. And I think that's probably what's missing from it. People would have probably come down a lot less hard on it than they have if the sound was in a better place. Because the Steam, I was really bummed to open up Steam and to see that on Slane's launch day that the reviews were mostly negative. And I was like, whoa, because the game is gorgeous. I don't want all this beautiful artwork, all these beautiful artwork and animations to go to waste. Like, all the backgrounds look gorgeous, and a lot of it's animated, and nice parallax scrolling and everything. And like I said, everything looks like very drippy, and you know, there's a lot of viscera everywhere. It's just a really neat looking game, man. Like, if nothing else, it would just be cool to pick it up and just so you could have it, so you could open it up and look at it, you know? I mean, it looks that neat to me. I just wish it played a little better. Some of the dialogue is really weird too. Like, a lot of it's very sort of like high fantasy kind of stuff. It's like, you know, you have awakened me from my slumber by the gods. You know, may ire face and steel prevail kind of stuff. But one of the guys that you run into, I guess he's kind of the main bad guy. He kind of teleports in and out every once in a while and talks to you. He's like, ha, you shall never succeed, Mr. Slane. Batharin, I guess, is the name of the main character. But at one point, like, the big evil, like, devil dude, or whatever he is, he looks like a black metal, like, ancient old god elf type guy with, like, red armor and, like, bloody swords and stuff. One of his lines actually says BTW in it, like, by the way. I remember seeing him, like, he says though once too, but it's spelled THO. So there's a lot of weird stuff like that I wonder if that was, like, placeholder dialogue bits that they just forgot to iron out or something. Also, man, the font, it's really hard to read. The text is very difficult to read. Especially when you go to a new level. There's, like, this big angry red background and then this white text over it. But the font is, like, super drippy, like death metal font, you know? And that's the way all of the dialogue is presented in the game too, and all the options screens and stuff. Anywhere there are letters in the game, it's that font. So it's kind of hard to read a little bit. So there are a lot of little issues like that sort of plague the game. Some of it feels good. Like, I did enjoy kind of navigating some of the areas, and I liked the one-shot type of enemies. I think those work really well with the game. I don't like the enemies that you need to kind of combo to death. Especially, like, I've run into a couple instances where it makes the encounters feel very copy and paste. But I've run into a couple instances where there were just, like, streams of bad guys sort of shambling towards me. And then behind them, there's, like, you know, the skeleton wizard guy or something. He's shooting projectiles at you. And you have a block, sort of. Like, if you push the duck button, or, like, you know, if you push down, you'll kind of duck, but you'll also bring your big giant claymore type sword up in front of your face. And that blocks projectiles, I guess. Or at least some of them. I can't. It's hard to say. Like, a lot of the game isn't really communicated too well visually as far as what happens when certain things collide. You know, sometimes it's really hard to tell. Like, especially again, like audio. Like, if you could just ascribe some very standouty sound effects to certain situations, like collision events. The game would communicate a lot better what's going on, I think. But you can block those fireballs and stuff. But the problem is you have this, like, stream of enemies coming at you, so you're constantly, like, you're like a walking wood chipper, you know? Like, you're just constantly trying to mow these guys down with your big sword, and you don't really have a moment to, like, block the projectiles. And every time I've run into a projectile-based enemy, that kind of seems to be the case. It's like, I can't really utilize the block very much because I have to fight my way through this, you know, I have to meat grind my way through this horde of bad guys. But anyway, I think if they just tweak a few things, it'll make a much nicer, neater package. And I hope they do, because man, the game is gorgeous. All the animations are brilliant, and the character design is really cool. It's just dripping with radness all over the place. The music is pretty cool too, and if I understand correctly, I think Celtic Frost does some of the music. Either Celtic Frost or Iced Earth or somebody does like the guitar tracks that you hear. It's just like drum, bass, and like super down tune, like death metal guitar in the background. So it's got style, man. It's got style for days. But some of the gameplay it just kind of falls flat for me. But we'll see. I'll be curious to see where it is in like a month or two and give it another shot. Also, I got to try out Factorio, which again, my friend Tim, the inspiration for the name of this podcast, told me about, and that game is fucking crazy, man. Like, it's a real I don't really want to go into too much because I didn't really play that much of it, and the game seems so deep. It's got fathoms. But you're a little dude that crash lands on a planet, and you have to gather a bunch of resources and sort of build your way up to creating a spaceship so that you can leave. And there are like alien civilizations and stuff on there already. I think they're mostly organic type stuff, like, like kind of like the Zerg from StarCraft or something like that, or like Tyranids and shit from 40K. But you have to figure out efficient ways to power your machines and gather resources to build them, and you kind of start off in coal powered stuff. Also, all of your you leave kind of like a carbon footprint on the world. Like all of your mining efforts and your machines running and everything create smog and pollution, and that's what like upsets the indigenous population. Like, it's actually really interesting. You can actually watch clouds of your mess make its way over to like an alien. I don't even know what you would call them, like settlement or something. And once they notice it, then they're like, let's go kill that guy. Wherever this is coming from, we need to end it now. You're kind of this just like loud, polluting asshole that lands on this planet, and you're chopping down your trees, and you're polluting the air with your fumes and such, and upsetting all the locals. But it's pretty entertaining, man. Like, just the building of your sort of settlement is crazy. Like, you can set up, like, you find a patch of coal or something, right? So you build a sort of like a drill mine type thing, and that drill mine will produce, like bits of coal or whatever, or like iron or something, wherever it is you put it. And you can create these little robot arms that will grab, like, as long as you set it up, like with an in and an out, like, so, like, wherever the mined raw ingredients are coming out of your machines. Like, if you tell an arm to take it from the machine, you can like place it on a conveyor belt, and you can have the conveyor belts like go all over the place. And so, like, say if you want to power a machine or something, you have like a coal mine over here, and that's drilling up coal and stuff. It's mining coal. Your arms can grab the coal and place them on a conveyor belt, and the conveyor belt can sort of lead over to where you're mining for copper. And there can be an arm over there that grabs the coal and puts the coal into the machine that's mining the copper, because it needs coal to power the thing. I mean, eventually you work your way up to like electricity and stuff, but I only made it through like the first few tutorials. But it's kind of insane. You can like set up your whole sort of industry effort to be like fully automated and everything. It looks very complicated, but very impressive. especially on a technical, like in an engineering level, you know, it's just nuts. I was very tired when I played it. I had been working all day and I was like, oh, let's try this. And it was like more thinking, you know, I just didn't have any more room left in my brains, to play something like that. So I was just like, yeah, I'm going to go hit some monsters with swords in Dark Souls instead. But yeah, I'd like to pick it up again and start to dig a little deeper. Like the real-time strategy nut in me, like the efficiency real-time strategy nut in me would probably have a ball with something like that. But it's got its depth and it's got its learning curve too, man. Like it's kind of, especially if you're just going by the tutorial. Like I've always had these problems with real-time strategy games where it's like in a tutorial they already have a bunch of stuff pre-made for you, so you kind of miss out on learning where all that stuff comes from because you're not involved in the process. So I think that made me a little confused and tired, so I had to put it down. But yeah, super neat Factorio. What else, man? What else? Yeah, Hyper Light Drifter's coming out at the end of the month. And I gotta be honest that I feel super guilty now because I have been using games like Hyper Light Drifter as a security blanket, in a manner of speaking, a little bit. Where it's like, okay, these guys have been working on Hyper Light Drifter, you know, full time, probably longer than I have been working on Savage. So it's a small comfort to know that they weren't done yet, you know, if that makes sense. Like here I am working away and I'm like getting stressed out about the game not being done and worried about, you know, everybody that I owe a copy to, like all the people that picked up groupies and all the people that backed on the Kickstarter and everything. And I'm like, oh my God, it is not done yet. And they've been waiting so long. At least, hey, look over, at least these guys aren't done yet either. So now Hyper Light Drifter is coming out and that's fucking awesome. But there's that selfish little troll inside of me that's like, no, now I have to finish soon too. Which I was gonna anyway, but you know, that kind of cut the sting a little bit. That cut the stress a little bit, knowing that I wasn't the only one just kind of out here like working away in isolation. But I will be super excited to play that finally. That and Chasm. I did play a little bit of the demo of Chasm, but that thing is like maybe a year or so old by now. And that, I mean, I don't know if I really need to share my feelings on the Chasm demo, but maybe I'll talk about Chasm and Dark Flame next time. But now, and holy crap, I talked for a long time. Jesus. Was gonna finally get onto what I'd been working on in Savage and everything. And right now I'm in the thick of stage design, level design, and general area design and how it all fits together on the world map. And I guess like playing something like Dark Souls is the perfect thing to play right now because all the bits and pieces in Dark Souls fit together so wonderfully. And without you even knowing it, you can be in one area and find a shortcut to another area, and you didn't even realize those two areas had any relation, let alone that they were like kind of that close together. I mean, I'm sure there's some like video game trickery going on in the background, you know? It's like geographically they probably maybe aren't that close together and they probably don't fit together quite that way, but they pull the wool over your eyes so well, if that's the case, and convince you that, you know, all this time, like you'd kind of been running parallel to this other area that you had already cleared or whatever. And now you have a shortcut through that and then another shortcut right back to the starting point of the game. So there are things like that about Dark Souls that are just amazing to me on an architectural level. Like, and that has given me a lot of fuel for stuff like Savage. And I've not that I am, you know, copying, levels from Dark Souls, but it's a really interesting thing to kind of keep in mind when you're building out a room and stuff. And I've kind of started to grind out a lot of the stages and areas in Savage because I am at a point right now where I really need to evaluate like what it actually is in the game, you know? And sometimes you don't know what you need until you have a lot of your pieces already in place. Like, I'm trying to get to the spot where I can be like, okay, it's almost time for beta. I can run through all of the intended areas, at least in an early incarnation, and I can look back and be like, okay, what sections feel weak and what everything's in place, but now I can kind of play with it a little bit and mold it and fine tune it and do some detailing on everything. So that's kind of where I am. I've made it through probably about a fifth of the stuff that still needs to get put down. But as I go, I'm also creating new assets that I still need along the way, which is kind of a nice way to work, because you're not just, sitting there making tile set after tile set after tile set for forever. I'm kind of past that, which feels really good. Like, I've kind of hit that milestone where it's like, okay, like, probably 90% of the visual stuff is finished. Here's a good example. Like, I have, like standard dirt tile sets and rocks and things and grass and some props. But right now, I'm pretty much wrapping up the section where you're going to fight off, excuse me, where you're going to fight off the Ilgogi, they're called. And they are I guess they would be, kind of similar to the Picts in the Conan mythos. Like the super savage, super like, low tech, barely even wearing furs, using stone and bone and wood tools and weapons, and they're cannibals, and they worship bears, and they're awesome and vicious, and they eat people and they hunt people, and they ride around on bears and use bears as sort of like watchdogs and stuff, and use bears for weapons and pelts and crap like that. And they worship the bear deity Magdra. And their boss, who I'm starting to finish now, is Tra Tibaut, which is 2-bit art backwards, because it's kind of based on a friend of mine's online Twitter persona, and she does a lot. She draws out a lot of her tweets in like a comic style bear, using the comic style bear as like a vehicle for her tweets and stuff. She's awesome to watch on Twitter and stuff. So yeah, follow 2-bit art on Twitter. But anyway, the boss is this big, crazy cannibal bear riding barbarian lady, and I hadn't finished her yet, so I'm going through all the stuff, like building out the levels and everything for the Ilgogi stages, and I get to that stuff and I'm like, okay, I don't have any bear related things, so I'm going to draw up some bear totems, and I'm going to draw like for example, the throne that Tra Tibaut sits on, and do her. It's like a double boss kind of thing. Like, it's her and her like big giant pet dire bear, Mag, and the two of them together form a boss fight. And you kill one, and then the other one gets a little more aggressive and meaner as a result. So hopefully that comes together and works well, because I haven't done that yet in the game. I do have a couple bosses that sort of spawn some mobs and stuff, which might be kind of cheap, depending on how you feel about boss encounters that are built that way. But trying to make them interesting, just the same. But Mag and Tra Tibaut are different in that they're both uniques, and they kind of have to work in tandem with each other a little bit. They need to be mindful of each other's attack patterns and where they are in their attack phases and stuff. But yeah, I was building out the first sort of iteration of the boss room, the encounter room, and I had it set up so that you were kind of ascending, these like steps sort of, and at the top, there's her throne, and there's like torches and crap, and I wanted it to look cool, like you're going up. There's a feeling of somewhat verticality to communicate, her power and her presence, and that didn't work so well. Because the way that the bosses in the game, and generally the enemies too, like they can kind of wind up in these sort of bottlenecks within the terrain. Like if you're not careful, if you being me, if I am not careful with design, so like she'd be winding up in the lower left or the lower right corner, and so the player would too, like because there's a lot of little weird geometry in there. And it didn't make for a very interesting fight because the bosses are generally, larger than your average enemy, except for maybe a couple guys. But they have very sort of robust move sets that allow them to jump around and stuff. But Tra and Mag, especially Mag, is a big bear, and she's big for a humanoid. Like her bounding box is larger. So the way I had it set up, it wasn't very interesting. I had, very sort of little movement space on these platforms. So I went back in and sort of went the opposite and created like sort of a hollowed out bowl type look to the terrain, and but with a much larger sort of central area where you could move around and have a fight. And then I placed the throne in the middle with just a single solid platform. In the middle, and it worked out a lot better. You still have that little kind of interesting give in the terrain, just to make things a little slightly interesting, because most of the boss fights take place on a very flat plane. But this works, especially since there are two of them, so it forces them to kind of do a little tiny bit of pathfinding to break up their moveset just a little bit. Like if they come up to the block where the throne sits on, they got to jump over it to get to the player if you're up in the center. And the same thing if you're down below, they need to run and fall off of it to go after you. So it allows the player to kind of attempt to control the fight a little bit by maybe stunning one of them off of that platform and leading the other one up on top of it, so they can get their licks in while the other guy is trying to get back up on the platform and stuff like that. So it feels a lot better now. Their movesets aren't finished yet. They're very kind of raw right now. Tra still has a handful of animations that I still need to finish, but she's coming along really well. She's got a big old stone and bone axe that she swings around. It feels super satisfying to dodge. And the bear's just like a big bear, and he's kind of using the standard bear set of attacks right now. But I'm going to change him up later, and also give him an armor overlay. Might even have the fight start out where she's riding on him. I don't know though. Not sure 100% yet. I kind of like having them as two separate entities through the whole fight, but we'll see. I mean, maybe the fight can change after you do a certain amount of damage. Maybe she'll dismount, and then he'll kind of do his own thing, and she'll do her own thing at that point. So I don't know. We'll see. But if there's one thing about bosses that I love to do, is I love to give them bits of armor that you get to knock off eventually. It just like visually communicates within that span of the boss fight some progress, But anyway, that's what I've been doing. Most of the beginning area is completely playable. You can play through it all. It takes me about an hour and a half to speed run my way through all of it, which is kind of cool. Like I'm kind of on track for how long I want the game to be. Pacing is a whole other issue, so that's something that'll have to take a pass on, or do a pass on, I should say, later on. Not to mention balancing. And just general polish, but yeah. First, maybe fifth is complete, and I use speed running very loosely here. Like I kind of have these, this rule where I will go through as fast as I can, but I will visit every single room available in the game, but avoid the overworld encounters. Like you can fiddle around on the overworld map for a very long time now, and it's kind of neat. Like, and I kind of get sucked into it a little bit. Like I've done it for like an hour before, just kind of grinded my way through the overworld map without actually visiting any of the critical path levels and the optional levels and stuff. So I'm having fun, man. Rough edges aside in the game, I'm having fun. Like games like playing games like Dark Souls 2 and Slain, I feel like are kind of critical for me right now to figure out what I could do in my game a little better, because there's so much that could go wrong at this point, right? Like I'm kind of going nuts. I'm going a little stir crazy, to be honest. Not only am I ready to be done, right? Which is another reason, like, for this podcast too, if I could kind of sidetrack a little bit. But it'll be interesting to kind of keep a weird sort of like audio log on how everything went with Savage. So, for the two of you listening, like it'll be kind of interesting to see how this all pans out, right? To see like what my thought process was, how wrong I was, if I was right at all about any of this stuff going into it, but like where my thinking was in relation to finally releasing the thing, just leading up to release. I think it'll be kind of at least a mildly fascinating, train of events leading up to it. So at least there's that. But anyway, yeah, I can play through about a fifth of the game if I speed run it. My version of speedrunning, of course, in about an hour and a half. I still fight all the enemies too, like most of them, not all of them, but I will go through and try to kill any enemy that's in my way. But for a lot of them, I kind of just like dodge past them, and I mean, there are plenty of rooms that require a puzzle to solve, or have enemies that you have to fight through in order to solve a puzzle and stuff like that. But yeah, man, adding a lot of puzzle elements lately. What a pain that is. Excuse me. I do not envy people who decide to make a puzzle game, purely puzzle game, puzzle mechanics, especially if there's like physics involved. Like, no, thank you. My puzzles are very stupid by comparison. They are, move the block over here. Maybe if the block is made out of wood, you got to throw your knives into it. In order to climb up it to get out of the area. So there you go, puzzle solved. Or go find the switch, maybe drop the block so that you can climb up on the block so that you can reach the place where the switch is, stuff like that, But I've since added like things like ropes and stuff that you can cut with knives and that will drop things that are hanging from the ropes. And I added like a counterweight system where like... there are moving platforms, but they'll only move if you throw some weight on it or if you step on it. And then, the opposite side will move in relation or according to where your other... it's a scale. It's a giant scale with like a fulcrum and stuff like that. Or whatever. You geometry nerds and physics nerds are probably just like cringing at me right now. Engineering people. But it's been kind of, it's been interesting to experiment with stuff like that, like puzzles and general physicsy elements like that and engineering problems like that, because I've never really done anything like this before. Like, the last shit I did like this was friggin' high school in geometry class, right? And C++ class in high school too. Which is funny because I was... even in C++ class, like, the nerdiest class ever, I was the one that everyone made fun of because I had an iMac, and it ran AOL, and that's how I got on the internet. So, like, everyone was like, Jesus Christ, man, just put it out of its misery, like a bunch of PC nerds in there. And of course, now I use a PC, but at the time... especially like the teacher was like, how are you gonna like practice, because all the stuff that we use is like based on a PC and all this stuff. But anyway, I digress. So Savage is going great right now. I'm just doing level design, struggling with that a little bit. It's really hard to create interesting levels that feel good and feel correct. Not to mention, like, you run into very specific problems, like especially the genre that you're working within that I've learned, like platformers. What kind of jumps are acceptable, right? what kind of jumps do you need to put in there to keep it feeling like a platformer and to keep, forward momentum going and to make it feel good and to make that integrate well with the combat system. That's what I've been struggling with. And I've noticed a lot of weaknesses in my combat system as it relates to a platformer now that I'm actually trying to build out these interesting platformer type levels, where a lot of the enemies that I have made are very sort of like, they're kind of dynamic, or they're more on the dynamic side where they're not just sort of moving hazards. Like, for example, a Super Mario game or a Castlevania game even, where like in Castlevania, enemies are essentially moving traps and hazards that you can attack and destroy. In Savage, like they kind of navigate the geometry of the level and watch out for traps and stuff, and they will also like respond to certain things that you do, depending on the enemy, of course, right? Like the Skeleton Warriors, for example, they're probably the most adaptable enemy type that I have. Like, they can stand and... Okay, well, first of all, they can spawn without anything, so they're just naked, and they use their fists and skeleton-y hands to attack you with. But depending on what sort of gear they spawn with, they can either spawn with, like, axes, swords, thrusting swords, spears, shields with spikes on them, armor with spikes on it. So what they can do, they have this really kind of complicated moveset and a complicated amount of things that they can potentially spawn with that dictates their moveset. So, for example, like they can stand and block if they have a shield. They can duck and block. They can block overhead too. In Savage, you can jump on an opponent's head, right, to stun him. If the skeleton is blocking and the player attempts to stun stomp them, jump over their head and land on their head or whatever, if the skeleton has a shield, he can raise the shield above his head and the player will just bounce off the shield. It gets even more hazardous to the player if the skeleton spawned with a shield that has a spike on it. So the player will land on the spiked shield and take damage as if they landed on a hazard or something. Also, if the skeleton has a spike shield, he can do a shield charge at you and sort of ram you with his spiked shield. If the skeleton has a thrusting weapon, like if it's a swordsman type skeleton or a skeleton that spawned with a spear, if the player is like keeping his distance, the skeleton can leap through the air and do a downward thrust strike at the player, sort of catching the player off guard, or at least that's the idea. So there are enemies that are not exactly like a Goomba in Mario, where they just kind of move from left to right, and if they hit a solid, they will reverse direction, and go the other way, or just fall off a cliff to their doom. So I'm starting to notice these problems where enemies won't feel very interesting because they're not static enough. Weirdly enough. So I've kind of gone through with like my archers, for example. The archers are very mobile. Like, they can run around and they can shoot in different directions and stuff, and they can run away from the player and hide behind like dudes with shields and things like that. But it doesn't really make platforming all that interesting. Because a lot of times the enemies will try to hunt the player down. Like, they'll move towards him, or they'll kind of meander around and navigate the terrain if they don't see the player. I am almost finding that it's more interesting to have the enemies sort of stationed at very specific spots and tell them not to move. Like, especially the archers that are, they're a projectile enemy. So it's almost like they are trap nodes. Like, use them as trap nodes, where I can tell some of them just to remain static, like say, hey, stay put, unless maybe the player strikes you, and then you can, adapt. Then you can like run all over the place and do whatever the hell you want. But for it's more interesting to have them standing like on a ledge or something and keeping a lookout for the player. And if the player gets close, then they'll start firing arrows at him. So I'm trying to find other ways to sort of almost like de-design some of my enemies to make them feel a little bit more platformer friendly. Because I don't want the game to just only be combat, because then that would also bring out some of the flaws in the combat, right? Even though I'm pretty proud of the combat system as it stands, it's fairly robust and it's mostly finished. Aside from some balancing issues later, but mechanically it's like very sound. It feels good. It's very reactive. It's very dynamic. It's very punchy, or at least I feel like it's punchy. It's got a lot of tension, a lot of release. Like it's fun to kill an enemy and watch his corpse like bounce around and stuff. And the blood is another sort of version of that release. It's neat to just see things flying after you've destroyed it. For lack of a better description, I guess. Especially if the enemy has like weapons and like bits of armor that fly off, they'll kind of explode a little bit in this like shower of, not too much though, because I don't like a lot of clutter, so I'm trying to avoid that too, like with my level design visually too. Like there's a lot of sort of things I need to watch out for now, and it's getting kind of scary. It's getting kind of scary where you'll be in the thick of it and you kind of start to think, is this going to, like, am I going to communicate this well once the game is done? I don't know. We'll see. So anyway, that kind of wraps up what I'm doing with Savage. What I'd like to start doing is answering some questions that I get asked a lot. So you find folks listening, you can hit me up on Twitter. That's at Tobor Prime if you want to ask questions, and you want to hear me talk about them on the podcast. We'll see how that goes. We'll experiment with it. see if anybody actually hears this and poses a question. I don't know, like tag it with like Big Giant Head or something, so that I know that it's intended to be discussed on the next little installment of this thing. But anyway, I figured I'd just go over some general stuff that I get asked a lot, especially when I do my live streams. I get a lot of people that ask certain questions, and I see these come up super often. But a lot of it is what tools I use. And that's pretty easy. And I've talked about these before, like on Madness AM and everything. But just, just for the sake of having an actual questions segment, I guess we can go over it right now. But for art and animation, I use graphic scale. Here's the nice thing about all these things that I'm about to list is you can get them all free. Get them all in a free version. They are unrestricted, which means you can, create work and save work and all that. But graphic scale is one that I use. It does have a paid version, but the paid version is, it adds certain functionality. You can get everything you need out of the free one. You can create your sprite sheets and everything. Game Maker Studio, obviously, is what I'm building Savage in. That also has a free version where you can create a game restriction-free for, the Windows platform. Tiled Map Editor is what I use for room design and stage design. Now, for the paid stuff, I use Photoshop for things like color correction and stuff like that. Sometimes I'll use it if I'm doing like a big background piece or something. Pixel Edit is another one that I use, and that's PYXEL Edit. And I use that for creating tile sets. It's awesome. It's fucking awesome for creating tile sets. I love it so much for creating tile sets because, if you're making a tile set, they need to repeat, right? They need to go in sequence. You need to be able to, tile them all over the place, and they need to all fit together and certain rocks need to fit up against each other when you're placing two tiles together, and they need to repeat their pattern. Pixel Edit makes that so easy to do because you can lay out a couple tiles on your canvas or your workspace, and as long as you lay the same tile out, when you draw on one, the others get updated in real time, so you can see how your pattern is fitting together, and it's fucking awesome. I used to do it in Photoshop, and it was such a pain in the ass because I had to constantly be copy pasting and seeing if things repeated well together. So Pixel Edit has been a godsend as far as that goes. For sound design and music, I do pretty much everything in Reaper. is my digital audio workstation. It's called Reaper, and even that has a free version. They want you to pay for a license, which I have. I have to actually update it, though, because they recently released Reaper 5.0, which is kind of a newer, shinier version of previous Reaper, and my license didn't carry over into the new one. But they're very man, what's the word? You got a lot of options available to you if you want to use Reaper. Like if you were making more than, I can't remember what it is, like $80,000 a year, on projects where you're using Reaper and stuff, they ask that you pay more for a license. But if you're not, and you're using it in a very like hobby fashion, or startup, something like that, I think the license is $45, something like that. At least it was when I bought it, but that was a few years ago. But it's a great piece of software, man. It's like super lightweight. It runs off of a thumb drive, which at the time was ridiculous. Like, because I remember using like Cubase and Innuendo and stuff like that, and those were very like heavy programs. Like you pretty much had to make your machine be like a Cubase or an Innuendo machine for the most part. Like you couldn't really have a bunch of other crap going on at the same time. But I use Reaper and like a handful of free 8-bit virtual instrument stuff. They're called VSTIs, which sounds like something that you might catch off of like a sailor or something. But it's but they're like synthesizers, that you Reaper has a MIDI interface, and you just plug one of those things into it, and you're off to the races. You're making music and sounds and stuff, and they're very easy to use. One of these days, I might get around to listing them all if I can dig out the information for them. But if you just Google 8-bit sound samples or 8-bit like or chiptune VSTs or VSTIs, you'll find stuff for free that's the fine people on the internets make for us doofuses to use. So that's what I use to make my sound and my music. Even like, I mean, I've done, like full on rock music stuff and metal and orchestral stuff using Reaper. You can do pretty much anything audio related in Reaper. So yeah. Another question that I get asked a lot is, that comes up all the time is like, hey, what's the price going to be on Savage? How much is it going to cost when it's released? And my answer to that is I'm not sure yet, but I am thinking it's probably going to be between $8 to $10. I'll have a much better idea when it's finished, and I can decide on something that's fair. Like it's gotten so weird anymore. Like people like to factor in the time it takes to play through a game is equal to certain amounts of dollars, which is kind of absurd. And I guess that's a whole other conversation for another time. But another question is release date. Obviously, that's the big one. And my bullshit response to that is when it's done, unfortunately. I am ready to be done with it as much as I know a lot of people are ready to play it and have been so patient waiting for me to frickin' finish this stupid thing. But yeah, soon. Pretty soon. We're getting there, man. My to-do list is shrinking like a violet or something like that. Something else that shrinks like a Johnson in the cold. I don't know. So release date, that's always a big question. And is it going to come out on things like Wii U, Sony Vita, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, stuff like that? Again, I don't know. I have no idea. I hate answers like this, right? And I hate giving them even more. But what scares me is having to support a whole other version of the game. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people don't realize how much work it is to have several different versions of a piece of software running at once. And I don't fully yet either, because I've never released anything on anything before. This will be the first time. So let's say I do a really big update to Savage. Like I fundamentally change a few things or something, or add new areas, add a new boss, something like that. Or just a big patch, like I fix a ton of stuff. I have to make sure that it works on the PC version, and then I also have to make sure that it works on like a console version. And sure, Game Maker sports that it can, you can port your project over to other platforms from one code base. And sure, I guess that's relatively true, but there's a lot of stuff that you kind of have to look out for when, just from the little bit of investigative work that I've done and talked to people about porting a video game from PC over to, say, Sony Vita. There's a ton of stuff that you kind of have to be mindful of going into it. And I don't know what's required. So I know that I've missed stuff, and I know that there are things that would break if I tried, or wouldn't function correctly, right? So imagine releasing patches and stuff, and then having to make sure that it all works for Vita as well, accounting for certain like particulars and unique stuff that happen on that console or something. Now imagine that patch doesn't work or something, or it breaks something else. Like, then you got to release a fix for the patch, and then you got to make sure that the PC one works, and the Vita one works, and the Wii U one works, and whatever else. And somewhere in there, wires might get crossed, and you might break everything, and it just sounds scary. So let's just do a PC thing first, see how it goes, and we'll take it from there, right? I guess. So no promises. I mean, it would be so awesome. It would be super freaking cool to be able to play Savage on, the types of things that I grew up playing. Like I was a Nintendo kid growing up. Went over to my friend's house and played Sega Genesis and shit like that. So being able to play Savage on a console would definitely be a dream come true, but we'll have to wait and see. Just getting it out on PC, man. Being able to be like, I finished a game and you can play it on this machine from start to finish and revel in the slaughter, the 2D low fidelity pixel art slaughter that is Savage. Just being able to release something like that, and that's going to be awesome in itself. Let alone the prospect of maybe someday being able to play it on a Nintendo thing or a Sony thing, So there's that. I'm going to try to do one of these a week, so we'll see. But anyway, thanks for sticking around this long if you've made it this far. Wow, I kind of just prattled on forever, probably about Dark Souls. But anyway, try to do one of these a week. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to check out Savage, the Shard of Gosen on Steam. Add it to your wish list. Check out Planet Tobor. Probably a lot of the music I'll be playing in this you can check out on Planet Tobor. I'll leave a link in the show notes or something. Wherever I post this, it'll probably wind up on Twitter and Facebook and all them social medias and such. If you're waiting on the game, thank you so much for your patience. You're fantastic. Thank you so much for the support. I know it's taken a while, but it'll be worth it when it hits, man. Don't want to release something that's not worth anybody's time. So, again, thanks for listening. You all are great. Have a good day, and see you on the next episode.